everybody. Welcome back to Impact Outdoors this week. Man, we have got an extremely special show this week. We've got one of the all-time greats in Ronnie Strickland on with us today. And we have a great conversation about his journey and how he kind of followed in his father's footsteps into the outdoor riding world and really broke into the outdoor industry, working with Primos, and then moving on to working with Mossy and Toxey Haas and that group, and just all the amazing things that Cuz has got to do in his career, and some really good funny stories along the way. So can't wait for you to listen to this episode. We've got a couple big announcements to make as well. We are having our very first event that we're putting on with some great podcasters from across the country coming up here in just a couple weeks, called the Hunt and Fish Podcast. And we've got the Aptitude Outdoors podcast with Paul Fazinski, the Turner Rowland podcast, Higher Calling Wildlife with Chester Moore, all coming into town. We've got some amazing guests coming to be a part of this. We're going to do a little turkey hunting, recording some podcasts, obviously, and doing some video and just having some good networking over at my good buddy Gene Hennigan's ranch, the Double Draw Ranch over in Junction, Texas. So we are really looking forward to that and getting some amazing content out starting in May. And the other big announcement we got is that we have been working on a big deal here lately, and we have officially joined the Waypoint Outdoor Collective, and we are super excited about that. If you don't know about Waypoint, look it up, waypointtv.com, and it's an online streaming service for hunting and fishing shows, anything outdoor related. And they started a podcast collective last year, I believe, and I am so honored to be part of that now with some great hosts on there. Really excited about what that's going to do for our show, and glad to be on the team now. So if you haven't yet, go check out Waypoint TV. You can check them out on Facebook, Instagram, download it on your TV, you can download it on your phone, whatever you can download stuff onto, you can get it. And the greatest thing about it is it's all free. So make sure and check out Waypoint TV, and be sure to be on the lookout on social media for what we're going to be doing here in a couple weeks here in Texas with the Fish Podcast program. So with that being said, let's jump right into this week's interview with Cuz Strickland. Well, Cuz, like I said, welcome to Impact Outdoors. Thanks for being on, and I really wanted to have you on, and it worked out perfect because turkey season's right around the corner. I mean, you're looking at a week and a half out for you, and over here in Texas we start up the second half of March, and I wanted to kind of the typical thing, hear about your growing up as a kid and what got you interested. It's always fun talking to people, especially people that people have seen on TV and do things, to hear about how they really got started, and when I think of hunting and fishing, I mean, there's names that come, Bill Dance, Jimmy Houston, Strickland, Will, Toxey, all these guys. I mean, y'all really invented this industry and really helped get it off the ground and started to where it's coming at today. So where did that all start for you growing up?
I grew up in Southwest Mississippi, a little town called Natchez. My dad was a lifelong military guy, and his passion was fishing. And I tell people all the time, he's still the best fisherman I've ever known that didn't have a boat. We fished a lot of ponds and did a lot of bank fishing and stuff. And man, he was good at it. He didn't hunt a lot. Now, he would take us out into the Homachita National Forest. We called it the Game Reserve. It's actually Sandy Creek Wildlife Management Area. That's the only place I hunted till I was well grown. And he would go hunting with us a little bit, and he might rabbit hunt some. But I have a brother 6 years older than me, and he kind of drifted toward hunting, and I was just fished out by the time I was 12 or 13 or 14. And I still enjoy it, but I just stuck to the hunting stuff. Something about that just fascinated me. And I really, really got into it and did it as much as I can. And my dad he also, when he retired from the military, he went to work for the newspaper, and he was the sports editor. Mm-hmm. And he had a column on Sundays called Roving Around Outdoors, and he wrote a hunting and fishing column. And then later in life, he had issues with his eyesight and stuff. And he asked me, did I want to continue that on? And I did. And ended up working in a sporting goods store there in Natchez, a local sporting goods store, and writing that hunting and fishing column. And I'm giving you the short version of this, but anyway, I was selling all kind of stuff in there, and I was selling Will Primos's turkey calls, which at the time he was making in his house at night because they were in the restaurant business. And the first VHS camera, great old big VHS camera that came in Natchez, came into Sears and Roebuck, and a buddy of mine bought it, Gary Porter. We called him Mr. Smooth. But anyway, we immediately took that camera out and I started, for some reason, I was just addicted to that. I'd rather film the hunt than I had be the hunter myself. And we figured out if we got 2 VCR units, we could put the footage in one and a blank tape in the other, and then plus play and record that footage. And I would send that VHS tape to Will after 3 or 4 months and say, listen, and I was just doing that so he could hear we were using his call. Check this out. And basically one day he showed up at Rex Sporting Goods with this giant camera he'd bought from WLPT or something up there, WLBT, the TV station up there. It was at the time, it was the most high-tech thing you get. It was huge. And he asked me, he said, you think you could film one of them turkey hunts with this thing? And I said, man, I don't know. But anyway, I did a little bit of it part-time for him. And the next spring I went to work for him full-time. I'd kind of figured out how to focus the camera and all that. And that's the year we did The Truth about spring turkey hunting, which and it's odd you say that. I've got a podcast that's going to air a week from, and that's coming Tuesday, where I interviewed Will about that 36 years later.
Nice.
It's 2 parts. And I kept having to tell Will, now look, just pretend like I'm not here, even though I had an integral part in that. But that's kind of where I got my start. I was the cameraman or the videographer. I don't call them cameraman. I call them field producers, because that's the hardest part of that whole television world is that person that's lugging that camera and producing it. But that's kind of where I got my start. I was the videographer for the first Truth. I helped him on the second one and the third one, but I was working for him full time. And when that first videotape came out, there weren't any. Gene and Barry once put out Bow Hunting October Whitetails just weeks before the Truth came out. And that was a deer hunting thing. There wasn't any real turkey hunting videos out there. This was some groundbreaking stuff. I mean,
right.
You know, it was back then, it was almost crazy. And it was a way bigger project than it is nowadays. I mean, Lauren, who you saw up here getting all this stuff hooked up, she edits on a laptop, and some of the videos I can shoot now on my phone at 4K and stuff like that. But back then it was a bulky, heavy, complicated mess. It was crazy. But at the time it was 5G LTE, man. What you were looking at is as good as it got. And working for Will was awesome. He was quite the entrepreneur and visionary, but his company, his business was almost 3 hours north of my house. So I just couldn't keep doing that. I had little girls, and I went back to work for the sporting goods store, and then I met Toxey Hayes, the guy that invented Mossy Oak, him and Bill Sugg, who's the president, excuse me, and first employee. They had gone to their first SHOT Show, hadn't been in business but months. And that SHOT Show was in Houston. And if I remember right, it wasn't as big then as it is now, but I had a little 10-foot booth down in the dungeon, I called it, right by a giant traffic column or something, had it wrapped. My wife actually saw the Mossy Oak, and she came and got me. I was buying sporting goods and a lot of archery stuff for 3 or 4 stores. But anyway, I got 30, 40 feet from that Mossy Oak, and I looked at it and went, man, that's going to be killer in the turkey woods. So I went over there and had a great visit, and I went back home and I started calling all of my buddies I knew all the sporting goods stores within, 500 miles, and telling, man, you need to get some of this stuff and put you a picture up that shows how good it blends in the woods. And Toxey called me one day. He said, dude, you're selling way more than we are. You got to come to work for us. So I did. I went to work for Toxey, I think in 86 or maybe January of '87.
Yeah.
And it's been a wild ride.
Wow. And what was the climate of the hunting world at that time? I mean, from a business standpoint, I mean,
Well, there was no hunting industry at that time. It really wasn't. There was the SHOT Show. I don't remember when it started, but that was just basically for sporting goods retailers.
mm-hmm.
And when the videos started coming, people could bring that stuff into their house and all that. That's when it really started to grow. And to be honest with you, it happened so fast. It all kind of happened at one time. It's like Will said when I interviewed him for his podcast, he said the timing was just perfect. He said you couldn't do what Toxey Haas did or he did. He said it would be impossible to do that nowadays because with streaming video and social media and all that, people they've almost become numb to how hard it is to do that and what reality is and stuff like that. So the timing of it was crazy, but you watched all these companies back then grow together and climbing tree stands and camouflage patterns and calls and optics. It was more and more stuff. A lot when I started hunting, I mean, it was all surplus military gear. That's all I could ever get my hands on. There wasn't any such thing as a turkey load or a turkey choke. That's why back in the days in those early videos, somebody shot you, they would immediately run to the turkey because you probably just shot him with a 2 3/4 inch 6 or 7.5, and it would basically knock them out. I mean, and they would a lot of times get up. And that's why people ran to the turkeys because they knew that would happen. NWTF did a whole thing about don't run toward your turkeys, because it's not safe gun handling and all that. But all those things just kind of evolved, and it was a timing issue, but it was a good time to see what was going on. And everybody worked so hard, it just kind of happened around you. I wish I would have paid more attention to what was going on because it got really big really fast.
Yeah. Well, once you got hired on, so what was your first job at Mossy Oak? What did you start out there?
Oh, I was just like everybody else. I was selling. It was Toxey Haas. I'm sorry, I got a bit of a cold.
Yeah, me too.
Toxey Haas. First meeting I had with Toxey Haas up here in West Point, Mississippi. And it's a true story. I went in his little office. It was in the back room and there was material laying on the ground and stuff. And his desk was a piece of plywood on top of an old window unit, air conditioner unit. And it was crazy. But anyway, it was him, Bill Sugg was the first employee, and he hired me and Bob Dixon about the same thing. Bob isn't with us anymore. God rest his soul. Bill Sugg tried to sell in Mississippi. Bob Dixon had Alabama, and he would run over the line into Georgia, and I kind of had everything else. So I would put Mossy Oak samples in the trunk of my car, and I'd do Louisiana and Arkansas. I'd go all over the place. And nobody knew what Mossy Oak was back then. Now that would be an easy job, but back then it's like, you got what? And I can remember I would go into these towns and go to a payphone. There's a simple thought for you, a payphone booth.
Right.
And people don't see those anymore, but I would
know what it is.
No, I don't know what it is. And I would get in the phone book and go back to the yellow pages and get to the sporting goods thing, and I would just tear that page out, that had them. So I'd have, a phone number or something, and that's kind of how we started. And I can remember like it was yesterday. I sold in, I think it was somewhere in Lake Village, Arkansas, was some sporting goods store where I sold $600 worth of Mossy Oak. And I was so shocked, I couldn't hardly write the order. And as soon as I got out of that store, I stopped at a payphone and I called Toxey and said, "You are not going to believe this. I just sold $600 for it." "You're kidding." So it was kind of born from the ground up. And Toxey and Bill got to where they were just so busy trying to keep that stuff manufactured. It really took off. It was doing well. And Toxey was the first guy that had those, what I call Where's Waldo pictures, where you'd put 3 or 4 guys in the woods and take a picture and you couldn't see them. And man, that caught on. So my first job was selling. And he called me in there one day and we were rocking right along. We were doing well, or doing better anyway. We were keeping the lights on. And he gives me this 45-minute spiel about PR. And he starts talking about Night and Hale and Ben Lee and all this kind of stuff. And he's talking about how they did it. And, you know, they have a PR program that does this and does that. And he just went on and on and on. And at the end, he said, you got to do this. You're the right guy for it. And I said, hey, dude, I said, I'm in. What's PR stand for? I didn't have a clue what he was talking about. I didn't go to college. I was too busy learning stuff. Anyway, that's what we started. He was referring to press relations as much more than public relations. But anyway, I dug in and I found out they had an outdoor writers convention every year. And the first one I went to was in Marco Island, Florida. And I went down there and set up a little 10-foot table. And I was a big fan of outdoor writers. My dad was a writer. I mean, he wrote the column and did the sports page and all that. Mm-hmm. I kind of had a list of who I wanted to see if they were there. You know, some famous people, Judd Cooney and M.R. James and Dwight Shue and some of these people, Jim Casada. And I did meet a couple of them, but as they would come by the booth, I would ask them, hey, who, because I didn't know what I was doing. I said, who's the best PR guy you ever deal with? And this name kept coming up, and the name was Mike Finney, and he was the PR guy for Berkeley Trilene at the time, and he was there. So I made it a point. I went over to the Berkeley Trilene booth and introduced myself, and wouldn't you know it, Mike Finney is a big bow hunter. So I immediately invited him to come bow hunting, and he did. And I spent a week with him, and I learned everything I thought I needed to know about the PR business. And Toxey Hayes will be the first to tell you that Mossy Oak was built on the backs of outdoor writers, because there wasn't any internet, there wasn't any TV at that time. And it was all about getting your stuff in Field and Stream and Outdoor Life and Sports of Field and Game and Fish. And I knew every writer there was. And I made friends with them. I had relationships with them. It got to the point where they would call me and say, hey, I know Jim Casada. They just made him the new, editor-in-chief of Turkey Call. And I'd call Jim and say, look, man, if you need some help with photos, I got stock stuff. And that's how we built the company. And all of a sudden, Toxey calls me and we have landed Browning as a licensee. Now that's a pretty big deal in our world. As Toxey would tell you, that's what put the second story on the office building. We landed Browning as a licensee, and 30 days later, we're fixing to launch a TV show on TNN, and that may be before your time.
Oh no,
you look a little younger.
No. That's what I grew up on, Saturdays.
Yeah, Toxey called me there and said, we're going to launch a major TV show, and I'm thinking, and I'm the guy that ran the VHS camera, so now I'm a television producer, and he tells me what all we're going to do, and he said, by the way, we're going to put it on TNN. We already had 3 or 4 fishing shows. There wasn't much going on there in hunting yet. The people you named, Roland Martin was on there, and Jimmy and Bill Dance. And they also had NASCAR and rodeo and country music. That was the perfect place.
It was the perfect channel.
It was.
It had everything you wanted.
I hate it went away. But anyway, Fox said, you're going to have to switch gears again and you be the TV guy. I'm like, yeah, okay. So luckily I went over to Mississippi State, which is only 20 minutes from here. And they have a broadcast school over there. And I found the dean, hung around, and I asked him, I said, you got there's a big class over there. A lot of people learn that. And I said, any of those people in there hunt or fish? And he pointed one out, big boy. He said, that boy right there loves to hunt and fish. His name was Stephen Davis. So I waited for him to get out of class and pulled him over to the side and told him what we were doing and all this, and basically hired him on the spot. So he was the finished editor for TNN, and he wasn't even graduated out of college yet, but he was one of the smartest guys. He's a Texas resident now. He lives up there north of Austin somewhere.
Nice.
But yeah, he was a great guy, but he helped launch all that. We bought our own Avid edit system because Toxey insisted. I said, well, we can shoot the video and take it somewhere. He said, no, we got to be in control of that because that's a touchy subject, killing animals and all that stuff. And I want to be able to control and edit all that, which was really smart. And Steven, we ordered that Avid edit studio. And when we got it finally put in and everything in place and tested and up and running, it looked like NASA. It was so many. It was crazy how complicated that was back then. And but anyway, we were on time. He edited 13 shows and it aired on TNN like in 94, somewhere in there. And it did really well. As a matter of fact, it was coming on Saturday mornings, like you said. And that second year, I think they put us on Sunday nights at 7:00. And that's when things really went nuts, because it was the Hunting the Country run was a long one. And to Toxey's credit, we didn't really chase him around on some big epic adventure trying to kill a giant deer. We just kind of told stories. And I learned how important that was when TNN went away. They sold out to Spike, and then anyway, we ended up on ESPN, which that ain't nothing to sneeze at. But I had to go up there to, I think it's Bristol, Connecticut, or somewhere up there, to have a meeting with all those ESPN guys, because they're thinking, man, these rednecks shooting TV. So we got in this meeting, and we were back and forth. I had my ideas and all, and those people were looking at me going, he don't know nothing about TV. And at the same time, I was looking at them going, they don't know nothing about hunting. And we were both correct, 100%. But sometime during the middle of this, the head guy, 3-piece suit, Berkeley Film School graduate, he kind of slammed his fist down on the table. He said, look, give me a reason to root for the people. He said, when your shows come on, y'all are already doing this. He said, who is that person? How did you end up there? Why'd you pick that? And I started thinking about it. And my dad used to say that kind of stuff all the time. He said, share it, tell your story. And so we were always big on telling stories. And that guy also made another comment. He said, look, cuz, give this a try. He said, there's two things that will never go out of style in this world, in this business. He said, one is great cinematography. People love looking at stuff that's pretty. And he said, characters and storytelling. He said, it'll never go out of style. And he's right. I have a pretty big social media following. And when I started my podcast, I threw a post out there saying, because I got a lot of followers that are young guys. I mean, surprisingly young. You can look in them insights and see who's following you.
Yep.
They're like 18 to 32 years old. I'm like, wow. So I threw this post out there, and we're going to do these podcasts. Who do you want to hear from? What do you want to talk about? Blah, blah, blah. And I got like 680 something comments in a short amount of time. And almost 580 of them were like stories. They want to hear hunting stories. To me, that's fascinating. And which tells you people want to be entertained. So that's kind of the long story of the TV, and where, how I've bounced from job to job is just wear whatever hat you're needed in that day kind of deal.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole reason I started my show. Was I've been so blessed to meet so many people from a vast array of backgrounds and stuff. And my wife was the one who really nudged me about 5-6 years ago, start listening to podcasts, and just kind of like a little light bulb went off about 3 years later. I was like, maybe that's something that I should look into, so, but it's been good. And I love hearing stories, just like you say, that's what people want,
They say behind every successful man, there's a woman standing back there rolling her eyes.
She's not behind me. She's at work right now, but yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Yeah, when I was approached about the podcast, and I'm an old school guy, but and I believe in relationships and calling people back. And, just like you, I got your message kind of out of the blue. And I'm like, I don't wonder who that is. Boom. I contacted you right back, because that's just supposed to roll. But my youngest daughter, she produces our podcast. She also edited about half of the Hunting the Country shows later. At one point, we had 5 TV shows running. We did one for Remington Country. We did one for the NRA called American Hunter. We had a show on the Golf Channel for a year called Second Season. But my youngest daughter, Lauren, she's an edit person. She approached me about the podcast, and I'm thinking, what's a podcast? You know, I didn't really know what it was, but anyway, it's working out good. And that's just how, you know, younger people get their information. If you're not delivering something to that phone, that you ain't getting viewed. I mean, there may be guys my age watching, you know, television. I'm sure there still are a lot, but I'm telling you, man, if you want to reach somebody that's a millennial or younger, you better be, you know, sticking it to that iPhone or that iPad.
Yeah, I think, the TV, I mean, you alluded to that. The TV industry has changed so much now. I mean, not veering away, but just having to change due to the access on mobile devices, to go into streaming media and social media and all the stuff that entails. And then I just had Tom Rowland from Saltwater Experience TV show down in Florida on, and he produces Saltwater Experience, Into the Blue, and Sweetwater TV, fishing shows, and we talked about that a lot. How much they've had to change their whole philosophy on putting content out. And it's not once a week now; it's multiple times every day, just to stay engaged with people. And man, I mean, it's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. I've got 4 grandkids. My granddaughter, at the time, she was like 11 or something. This was 4 or 5 years ago. And I was she was at my house and she was on her phone. And I was kind of getting on to her a little bit, in a funny kind of way. And she said, Pop, if you're not on Instagram, you're not relevant. Now, she wasn't saying that about me. She was just telling me. And I got to thinking about that night, and I said, you know what? I'm not going to not be relevant to my grandkids. So I just kind of dug in myself with the help of Lauren and my wife and all that. So I started doing Instagram. I didn't do Facebook for a long time, but I liked Instagram because it was just mostly photos and a little caption. I was like, I don't post here I am buying my coffee and all that kind of stuff. I try to do hunting related stuff. And
yeah.
It's, I'd say I don't know how much time I spend on that a day, but you're right. It's multiple times a day because people, once you start building a following, they expect to hear from you. It's just like this Florida trip I go to every year. We've been doing this Wounded Warrior hunt forever, 15 years. And I started a countdown 30 days out, 29 days left, 25 days. And people kind of expect to see that. And to me, it's fun and it's free.
Yeah.
So you're right. And and I'll shoot that for video. I have a YouTube channel I post to occasionally called Cuz 411. And I always put that on there if I'm lucky enough to get something. But it's, you're right. It's a full-time job and you better be able to kind of change in mid direction because it is a new day.
Mm-hmm. It is a new day. And, I know a lot of people in the industry, fishing and hunting sides, and it seems like everybody today, and there's so many people coming in today because there's so many, YouTubers and people doing their own stuff and like sponsorships and things like that. I mean, that's been such a hot topic lately, people talking about that and how some people just really strive for that. And then you look at somebody like the guys from the hunting public, who aren't driven by that factor and how successful they've been. And what are your thoughts on that, as far as what's going on right now in the industry?
Well, it's a different audience out there. And I've always had what I call a pretty good cheese meter. And people nowadays can tell real quick, if you're hawking a product or something like that. And I think those days are limited. And you see the smart people in the hunting industry, they've kind of taken over their own media. Mm-hmm. Like Toxey was one of the first ones. Look, we got to control all that. We got to figure out what to do. And we kind of do our own social media, Mossy has Facebook and Instagram, all that stuff. And people aren't going to put up very long with, oh man, this is my so-and-so. If I hadn't been in this tree stand and if I hadn't been shooting that air and all that, I don't do any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Now there's a place for sponsors because, a lot of those sponsors put money back into wildlife conservation and all that, but there's a way to do it and a way not. And I think, I've never boosted a post and I don't try to buy followers and all that. So I've got a really good audience to test stuff on. I was watching a podcast yesterday, and I'm not a big NASCAR fan. The reason they stopped on there was I forgot what it was, but it was Dale Jr. His podcast.
Mm-hmm.
He was talking about he made a post about a hotel he stayed at on a strip, kind of an off the thing. And he said he tweeted about the name of it. He just got hammered because people were saying, "Oh, that's an ad. They let you stay there for free. They paid you." He said, "Man, you got to be careful what you throw out there because people will think it's an ad." But I think just like everything else, the hunting cooperate. All the corporations they're going to adjust and do what they got to do. They can do their own social media and not depend on having these influencers, if you will. There's plenty of influencers out there that I'm sure they get. I mean, I follow a bunch of them. I follow people on YouTube a lot. I started following YouTube really strong 4 or 5 years ago, and it was in that self-reliance category. But I've seen people jump up through there who started with, rubbing 2 sticks together and all that. And now they're driving, brand new tractors and that's going to always be with us. And as long as they tell me up front, hey, this video today is sponsored by the Acme Tractor Company, I'm cool with it. Good for you, buddy. They sent you a tractor to use or keep or whatever. But you got to be careful, I think, on social media, getting too deep into doing product reviews. Well, that said, the most viewed video on my YouTube page, Cuz 411, it was a turkey vest dump. And I'm pretty sure I didn't name one thing but a brand. I said, this is a slate call, and this is my tube call. And I did do the mosquito repellent thing. What do you call those? Thermocell.
Yeah.
I did name the thermocell, but
everybody needs a thermocell.
Well, yeah, I called a guy in South Florida this morning. I said, how is it down there? He said, hot and muggy. Bring your thermocell. I was like, I cannot wait. So, yeah, it's different, and it's all about messaging and how you do it. But I can tell you, the people we are talking to today are they're just advanced. They've, somebody that's 20 years old or 30 years old, they were raised on technology, not unlike me, and they're kind of savvy. And so you got to be careful how you approach them, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've got a 4-year-old son and a daughter who just turned 7, and trying to help my daughter with her homework. I mean, they're teaching the kids completely 180 from the way, I learned it in school, and I have to go in and learn it the way they're getting taught before I can help her.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy. Everything's different now. So I tell her, it's like, yeah, I used to have to use the typewriter growing up when I was in school, writing book reports and things. And she's like, what is that? It's like, we didn't have cell phones and all that. And it's crazy to watch people's reactions when, they just think that stuff's been around forever.
And I understand that. And I understand how to work with millennials and stuff like that. And some of the stuff, and I don't live in the past. Will and I talked about on his podcast. I don't live in the past, but there's some old school stuff that's really good, like returning somebody's phone call or having a relationship, a one-on-one handshake deal, and following through. Yeah. And one of my favorite things I ever saw, and this is getting back to the industry, I was watching, it was before some football game, but it was, they did about a 5-minute documentary on the guy who was the maintenance guy for Lambeau Field in Green Bay, Wisconsin. I can't imagine having to do that. But anyway, they're talking about how pretty that field is all the time. And you can imagine what kind of ground he has. Anyway, he's talking about he did this and did that and he did this. But he said, I've always lived by the flap method. And the guy was interviewing him. He said, flap? What is that? He said, finish like a pro. He said, so many people they're great to start stuff and everybody's excited on the front end, but when it gets down to them final things, it may be doing it at 10 o'clock at night. He said, you got to finish like a pro. And that's always stuck in my mind. That's one place that some people have trouble, is like taking it over the finish line.
Yep. So, well, I want to get into something I know you're always excited to talk about, and that's family. You preach that all the time, and I love that, and spending time with your family, your girls and your grandkids, and getting them involved in the outdoors, which is you know, it's something that we try to do so much over here, recruitment and that kind of thing, but just, you know, being involved with those kids now and spending all that time with them out in the woods and seeing how they're progressing, and especially as young as some of them are. I mean, how's that make you feel? That's got to be great.
Yeah, it's pretty unbelievable. I had girls and I took them hunting a lot and fishing. I mean, we still got old videos from back in the day. I shot a lot of that stuff with the Primos camera. I got some homemade fishing trips and all that kind of stuff. But I didn't necessarily want my girls to be these big, you know, starry-eyed hunting fishing stars. My main goal with that was I wanted to know where food came from, because people have lost sight of that. They really do. And now they both get it, and they both they married guys who hunt, and their kids are exposed to me and everything. But I can remember how much time my mom and dad spent with us, and it was like that's just kind of you were exposed to that in your environment when you were little. But I did girl things a lot. Of course, my youngest one, she loved to hunt. Amy would go some, but that was a lot of softball and dance recitals and all that which I loved. I tried not to miss anything. And now I got 4 grandkids. One of them's a girl. She's headed to college, by the way. But then I've had the blessing from God to have them 3 little boys to do boy things with, which was my specialty, And thank goodness my girls, and they got great dads, and it's not that they wouldn't have got it anyway, but man, I'm gonna spend every waking minute I can with them. BB guns, bow and arrows, fishing. I had 2 of them on a trap line with me, they would come home from school and change clothes and meet me over there at the shop. Let's go run the trap line. And there's not many, 12 and 8-year-olds or 11 and 8-year-olds that can literally run a trap line. And I got down to the point where I was just driving them. Literally, they could do everything they needed to do. And to me, that's a life skill. And I don't want to sound old or macho or anything, but little boys, especially at that age, they need to learn how to do boy stuff. And girls can do both of them. That's fine. People, you get in that conversation, it's like, are boys and girls equal? And in my eyes, they're not. They're different. Girls are very different and precious. To me, they should be put up on a pedestal, and people just cringe when you say that. And I love them all, but they're just different. And sometimes in this world, they start taking the boy stuff away from the little boys, and they wonder why when they grow up, they don't have men's values. So anyway, that's kind of my job part-time, is to make sure the boys are doing boy stuff. And if the girls want to come play, we're all in. We'll get muddy together. But it's just been a gift from God, because I've slowed down enough where I can enjoy that. When my girls were little, you know how it is. Both parents are working, and everything's a tornado.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have enough. You look back and go, man, I wished I'd have spent more time doing this. Well, now I can kind of back up and watch it as it's going on. So that's a blessing.
Yeah. And I think this past year has highlighted that and provided the opportunity for families to spend more time together. I mean, we've seen that tremendously over here, because everybody's been trying to get out and go fishing as a family and stuff. And, you look at what's happened in the past year with this pandemic and all this crap going on in the world. But, I've been, it's just frustrating because, it gets you down. You think about all the stuff that you can't do anymore for the time being. But, you got to look at it and find the light behind some of this stuff. And I think that's been the key. And is seeing people getting out and spending more time interacting with their kids and stuff. And I just hope that continues, if we ever get back to whatever normal was, before. So
but. Yep, I had our COVID experience wasn't that bad. Of course, we all locked down, but I mean, we're kind of prepared to lock down. And I didn't, those kids out there, my youngest daughter, they have a house on our farm, it's a quarter-mile away. So we were blessed to have them up there, and we just kind of locked the gate and did our own thing. But, and like you said, the good news out of all that stuff was the hunting license sales this spring went crazy. Now, some guys were losing their little honey holes out there on the WMA during turkey season. But look, that's the price. That's just the price you pay. You got to go find another spot, and
Yeah.
because we're always saying we want to recruit hunters. Well, guess what? We recruited some. I think it was so popular during turkey season because number one, the weather was really nice, and people that really aren't into hunting or may have never been hunting, they can mentally see themselves killing a turkey and carrying it out of the woods because they've had turkey for Thanksgiving. Now I can figure that out. And it's a little harder on whitetails because I've done a lot of stuff with what used to be the QDMA. It's the National Deer Association now, but they did a lot of stuff with the public at these Field of Fork and all that. And you get around these people that have never hunted and they sign up for these classes. And I attended some of those workshops, and that's where they kind of would draw. That's what was freaking them out. I know I can figure out how to do this. I'm learning. I know about the wind. I got a guy that's going to let me hunt on his place. But it's like what I do once the deer's dead. That's kind of freaking them out,
Yeah.
And turkey's not that big a deal. They can see themselves grabbing a turkey. So there was a lot of places. I don't know if you follow Dave Owens on YouTube on the Pinhoti Project, but he's a hoot. And he talks about that a lot. I did a podcast with him not long ago, and he said, yeah, there was a whole bunch more people hunting on public ground than it used to be. So,
yeah,
I think that's
well, my wife, she never hunted before. And she went with me a couple times, and I was like, I really want you to go turkey hunting with me. And that was after I really started getting into hunting turkeys. And I called the bird in. It took about an hour and a half to get this bird to commit coming off the neighbor's property. And I was like, I didn't think he'd come because he had to come through the fence and everything. And lo and behold, we got him in and got the full show. And he come in about 10 yards from us. And I remember my wife just shaking, her leg was sitting there touching mine. And I just let him do his thing, and I wanted her to see it. And then we ended up harvesting the bird. And after we got that bird and got some pictures, she kind of looked at me and was like, I think I could hunt a turkey.
Yeah.
And she did. She got one the next year. So
I tell people all the time it's the best hunt on the planet. You would think you can go with whoever. I don't care about that. And you get in that situation, you would think it's a saber-toothed tiger coming in from behind you. They get so excited. There's absolutely nothing like it. Thank God. And man, being in Texas too, geez, man, you talking about having them Texas turkeys out there. I could tell you Texas turkey hunting stories forever. Cause when I first started going out there wasn't anybody hunting them. And it was ridiculous how many turkeys it was.
Yep. Yeah, it's especially I hunt a lot in the hill country, and so I mean we got Rios everywhere, and I think one day last year we called, and me and my daughter had 8 birds come in on us, and we're hunting a small property, about 500 acres, and but over that weekend we probably seen 30-40 gobblers, over the course of that trip, and she's just eating up with turkey hunting. So I'm hoping she gets her first bird this spring. We'll see what happens, but she's ready. So
you got to make sure she does the turkey hunter's oath.
Yes, we'll have to call you and have you do it. Yeah.
Look, I did it on my Instagram page yesterday. I did a post. I had 4 soldiers down there in Florida we were fixing to take, never been hunting. And they all 4 did the turkey hunter's oath. So you got to go pull that up on Instagram or Facebook and look at it.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you about my first trip to Texas. The first guy I ever heard that went out there was Ben Rogers Lee. I don't know if you've heard of Ben Lee, but he was the first superstar in the turkey hunting world from Coffeyville, Alabama. And I was reading in Field and Stream, I think it was, he was getting interviewed, and he said the guy took him on his ranch and all that. And he said he got there about lunchtime. So they went out about 3 or 4 o'clock, and he's going across this barbed wire fence, and he pushes the top strand down, and it squeaked in the staple, and a turkey gobbled at it. And he said he squeaked again, and he supposedly called that turkey up squeaking in that. And I was thinking about that going, And about a year later, I'm looking at a magazine. I don't remember which one it was, but there was a tiny little 2-inch ad down there for you could kill 2 turkeys for $200. It was down there, Sonora or El Dorado, somewhere down there. And I called the guy, and I guess you could technically say I booked a hunt. And he told me when I could get there and all that stuff. And I got in my 1963 GMC that I just put a floor shift in, and you could see the highway down there. And I left Mississippi and I drove, I don't know, all night. I got there probably about 4:30 in the morning. And of course, it was dark the whole time I'm driving across Texas. This is my first time. And anyway, I found the place and everything. And back then it was like he's telling you directions over the phone, you're writing them down. So now you got a piece of paper. It wasn't no GPS coordinates or nothing. Anyway, I found it and went in, and he said, "All right, I'm going to take you to this thing." He said, "It's one pasture." He said, "Now I'm going to let you out." And he said, "You just walk straight west. You'll see the sun is behind you." He said, "Just keep going west and don't cross any more barbed wire fences. You got that whole pasture." And when he said that, I'm thinking, that ain't much room right there. But anyway, I get out and it's still dark, and I'm walking and I'm looking at the ground. It kind of looks a little bit like the moon to me, but I ain't hearing anything. And then the sun starts coming up, and I can't see anything taller than knee high. A lot of grass, a lot of little scrub brush. And I'm thinking, I done been hoodwinked here. And I wasn't happy about it because I didn't have $200 back then. And anyway, a sound started off to my right, and it went all the way across me down to my left. And I can't even tell you, it didn't sound like a turkey gobble. The first one did. Anyway, I kind of trotted, and then woo, down the hill was the big basin down there with all the live oak trees, and there's a lake down to the left, and all the trees were down there. I couldn't see them. And let me tell you something. I've never heard so much turkey sound in my life. Anyway, I killed 2 turkeys. I don't know how long it took. It wasn't long, and I was driving back to Mississippi. And for a long time, I didn't miss a spring coming back to Texas. I had a long streak of like 30 springs in a row. I've missed a couple, but there's no place like it, man. I'm telling you, y'all got most of the turkeys and all the Whataburgers.
Yeah. Yeah. The Rios are no doubt huge numbers here. The Easterns are really making a rebound for us. And through the super stockings from NWTF and Parks and Wildlife and stuff. And that's been the one ticket I haven't got to punch yet. I've been the last 4 years hunting public over on the border, along some of the national forest land over there, and they're there. But like you said, man, yeah, it's tough.
It's a different creature. I've always tried to talk to NWTF to get some of them Rios and bring them to Mississippi. That's what I dream about. But
they are vocal.
That's why we did so many events out in Texas. When we had outdoor riders and customers and big buyers, we'd have a camp in Texas because it was so much fun and the success rate was so much higher. And you just can't bring people to Mississippi down around here and expect to hear a bunch of turkeys, because right now you ain't gonna hear a bunch of turkeys. And man, they're just evil. And you're dealing with mosquitoes and every kind of poisonous snake in the world and unbelievable humidity, and take somebody at the wrong time and they're like, and you actually like this. Yeah. So, welcome to Mississippi.
Yeah. Shoot. Well, that brings up one other thing I was wanting to touch on was the NWTF, and and kind of this last year. I mean, it was really a struggle for a lot of people, especially in the world of raising money in the name of conservation, and they still found a way to maintain their goals that they set for last year. And I know with the convention just wrapping up, the virtual convention just wrapping up this week, that there's a whole new marketing campaign coming out. And I don't know if you want to touch on any of that stuff that came out of the convention for us or not, but
sure, I'll be glad to. I've been involved with NWTF for a long time. No, I'm not on their payroll, never have been. Just believe in what they do, because there's not that many conservation groups out there to protect wildlife. And I learned a long time ago, when people are really passionate about hunting and fishing, man, they'll go off. When I took over my dad's column on Sundays, I wrote an article one Sunday about don't put a dead deer on the hood of your truck and drive through town. Don't go in the liquor store with your camo and your orange, just some. And let me tell you something, I got more hate mail than you can imagine. It's like, you stirred that emotion on people. And the NWTF's in the midst now, kind of rebranding themselves, which I personally think's very smart, dead on. It's the right thing to do, because just like you said in the beginning of this podcast, we're speaking to a new audience, and there's a lot of people that have that old school set in their mind that logo's terrible or that direction's not going to work and all that. Well, I mean, maybe so, but in my experience, and I've dealt with a lot of conservation groups, the ones that scream the loudest are probably doing the least.
Mhm.
And the people that are concentrating hard on helping the wild turkeys, you don't hear much from them. And it's easy to get in a chat room somewhere or on a thread and start bashing what the NWTF's got going on. And that kind of makes me sad, because it gets back to that. Well, would you say that to me face to face? Probably not. That's the bad part of social media, because everybody's got an opinion and they want to throw it up there. But before, and I've seen some of them, and I did a video for them talking about the new logo and the direction, and all that. I shot it myself, sent it right to them, because I did. I went through the presentation. I loved it. My take on it's a little different, because number one, I saw the hunting industry evolve from nothing. Then I saw the hunting industry when I've been working in it for a long time. I saw my kids grow up in the hunting industry. Now I'm watching these grandkids and how they get their information, what's important to them about hunting. It ain't about us anymore. I wish I could explain that to a lot of people face to face. But if you want to reach those, I don't even know what the name is for the 15 to 20
Yeah.
generation something, Z,
Yeah.
whatever it is. You got to change your message. I personally love the logo. To me, it looks like two arrows pointing at a turkey head, which means, hey, we're staying on point. I get all that. I don't think the logo's that important, but I like it. I certainly like that they're spending enough effort to where they realize, hey, we got to take it up a notch. And that's the way I look at it. It's them taking it up a notch. And again, I'm not on any kind of payroll. I'm not on any kind of board. I'm just a fan of wild turkeys, and that's the conservation group. And as long as I can, I'm going to pitch in and help them. And I'll promise you, Toxey, Hayes, and Mossy Oak feels the same way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I strongly urge people, if they're looking for a group to get involved with, is NWTF. I mean, we've got and I know you've actually met our president of our chapter over here in Houston, the Harris County Wildlife Group, Terrence Jackson. I don't know if you remember or not, but I think you and Brenda Valentine end up helping sell tickets to the banquet one day over at the Bass Pro Shops when y'all were there or something. But he always talks about that. And we do a lot of events throughout the year, and that not all of them involve turkey hunting, but it's conservation and getting kids involved and the parents, and providing that message, of what the organization's about, what it promotes. And it's great. It's a good organization, and I sure hope we can get back and go to the convention again next year. So
my guess is we're going to be back in Nashville next year. I certainly hope so. But change is scary. There's so many people there. They know what right now looks like. They don't know what down the road looks like. So it scares them, and they get negative and they throw all these comments out. But if you just stop and think about it, they're doing it for the wild turkey. And I read some comments last night. And the guys were talking about, man, they're paying all these high salaries and this. Well, number one, nobody's got any idea what anybody makes over there. Number two, nobody works for free. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. A guy come up to me one time, and I forgot where the show, said, you need to just give me some of that Mossy Oak. And I said, why? He said, because I like to hunt. I said, what do you do for a living? I work at the Winn-Dixie. I said, well, why don't you give me about 25 gallons of milk and we'll make a swap? Well, I can't just give you the milk. People are crazy sometimes of how they think. But if you'll stop and think of what's happened with the NWTF kind of leading the charge, they should have been around. I was born in 1954. They should have been around in 1965, or been around when Tom Kelly hunted in 1952 and went every day and never heard a turkey. And to see what the NWTF has brought this far, Again, I've been able to see it, and thank God for them.
Yep. Yep. And I guarantee we wouldn't have Easterns in Texas right now if it wasn't for NWTF. So, like I said, we just had a release Tuesday this week. I think they released 60 more birds, and it's really cool to see those birds over the last 10 plus years and how they've spread and reproduced, and working with some of the WMAs and what they're seeing in their research. So, well, there was one other thing I wanted to talk to you about, and you recently had Ryan Smith on the show, and I wanted you to talk about Soul, the organization, and what that is. I think that's really important, and I didn't know about that until I heard that podcast, and that was a really good one to listen to, and I highly recommend people go back and find that one on y'all's Fistful of Dirt podcast. But tell us a little bit about that organization and what it is and what y'all are trying to accomplish.
Yeah, SOLE, SOLE is an acronym, and it stands for Sportsmen Organized for Law Enforcement. And it's just something I got to thinking about, and Mossy has done so many things and continues to for wounded veterans. God bless them, wounded or not, any veteran. But, if you start looking around, there was just not a lot of stuff in place for law enforcement. There's stuff out there for them, but it's all law enforcement based people doing it. And it's like, man, that doesn't make any sense, because you think the average thinking American would be in favor of law and order. Apparently that ain't the case. But anyway, we got to thinking about it, and I did some research in the areas. We settled on 3 groups to help raise money for. One of them is COPS, COPS, and that's Concerned of Police Survivors. And that's if a policeman, highway patrolman, whatever, gets killed in the line of duty, they step in at that moment and start helping. And that help runs deep. And there's another group called Below 100. And this is retired and active law enforcement that go to smaller towns and stuff, and they do safety training. Some of it's high-speed driving, and they train local officers who may not have had the opportunity to do that. They do this on their own. And the other one's called Spirit of Blue. And the Spirit of Blue Foundation actually buys equipment. And the number one request they get is tourniquets. I was so dumbfounded when I heard that. I was like, it's like they work in a war zone. You would thought it would have been body armor or something. But anyway, those 3 groups right there represent everything we were trying to do. So all the money that we've raised goes to one of those 3. And Soul could kind of get out there in the hunting world and say, look, we've done everything else. We're responsible for the Pittman-Robertson Act. We've done all this money. The hunting and fishing public are the best. Let's get behind law enforcement and show them that we care. And we've raised some money, at the Foxhole shootout. We couldn't have it this year, but the year before that, we raised a lot of money, and we sold a check for, I don't remember what it was, $30-something thousand that they were. And that doesn't sound like a ton of money, but to me, it's almost more the message we're sending to law enforcement. You know what? We're here for you. We care about you. But now we've got instead of doing it in-house, which none of us had time to do, we've got Ryan Smith doing it, who is a living, breathing angel and former law enforcement guy and one of the smartest people I've been around. He also runs the Spirit of Blue, but he's helping. We have a 501c3 in place. And we're just now, in the last few weeks, started addressing, we've got some industry people we're calling saying, hey, look, just for $500, you can be a running sponsor of this. We're not asking you to refinance your whole company. And those little donations will go a long way. But and I hate to keep posting it out there on my social media, but because I think people, he's just trying to get money. Well, again, it's more about the message. And I found out early on, when I would put a post out there about Soul, I'd get so much reaction from law enforcement. Hey, I'm a cop in wherever, in Nebraska, or I'm a highway patrolman in Illinois, and I'll tell them, God bless you for what you're doing, but I said, I don't want your money. I want to get everybody else's money to help what y'all have to deal with every day, because they do deal with a lot. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah,
God bless you for
absolutely.
letting me talk. Sometimes you just can't talk about things, and you shake your head and go, why would not everybody want to hear about how to help them?
Mhm.
So, but you're a Texas guy. Texas is a little different. God bless Texas.
Well,
People out there are normal.
yeah. Well, I have a huge heart for law enforcement, and growing up, that's I wanted to be a police officer growing up. I was in a program called the Police Explorers growing up when I was back in Oklahoma, and wanted to be a game warden, and then ended up becoming a fisheries biologist by trade, and but still support everything they do. And I've got lots of friends in law enforcement, and that podcast really hit me. I love that show, and did a lot of research into it after listening to it. So thanks for talking about it. So, but I know we've been on here about an hour, but and is there, I don't know, is there anything else you got coming down the pipeline this year that's going to be new, or what's kind of your plans for the rest of the next few months besides turkey hunting?
Turkey hunting's that's about as far out as I want to look right now. I got some stuff I promised people last spring. We did a lot of I'll do a lot of fundraising stuff, winter hunt with cuz or wherever.
Mhm.
And sometimes I overextend myself, but I still got 4 or 5 of those to deliver from last year because we had to cancel because of COVID. So I got a lot of that. And, I still got 3 grandsons who want to go, and turkey season's about as far as I want to move on out there. But, the podcast, as you well know, it'll keep you really busy. We roll one out every Tuesday, and that's a ton of work on Lauren. She's a QC nut. She likes everything to sound like you're in a padded room, on top of a cloud at 30,000 feet. She don't want to have any. So, but it's fun. And I've learned that that's a good vehicle to get messages out. And if I'm going to do anything different on my upcoming podcast, I'm going to probably tell more stories and get people in that are good at storytelling, and try to keep young people entertained. So yeah, if I can get through turkey season, I'll worry about down the road when I get to the end of that road.
Well, I just want to thank you for coming on, man. True legend in the industry, and and a lot of people look up to you. So just thank you for everything you've done. I mean, you've made a tremendous impact on a lot of people, and can't wait to see what comes the rest of this year. So, but
Well, Derek, you're awful kind to say that, and see, now it's people like you who tote the mail. It's you and Aaron Warbritton, those guys. Y'all are now the tip of the spear. And the fact that you would even ask, some of the older guys, come on, tells me where your head and your heart's at. So that I deep down, I feel like, if there is a time to pass the torch, we're leaving it in good hands. I feel like it. I got a lot of faith in that really young generation, that 15 to 25. I really do. I think some of those people are dialed in, and they realize that some of the old people have not done the best job, but I appreciate people like you and the hunting public and the Pinhoti guys. Of course, they're all trying to make a living and all that, but man, that stuff's important. It's very entertaining. That's why I never say no. I did that blood origin thing, and he said, you're very giving of your time. And I said, well, that's the one thing I got, I can give away. And, if it helps, well, so be it. See, we got to talk about soul. So that was, that made the whole podcast worth my time. So thank you.
Yep. But yeah, well, let's hopefully do this again, and look forward to seeing you at least at convention next year. So, all right, thanks for being on.